But I was also asked to give this presentation about a piece of research. We're actually only entering our second year, but we've been doing it for 3 years now. But we won't talk about the fun and games of getting research funded. And basically this is a project about horse tourism using native breed horses. And it's funded by the North Atlantic Opportunities Fund, which means that it's Iceland, Faroe Islands, West Norway only, and Greenland. And I actually have somebody who wants to start a horse tourism business in Greenland that they're going to start with us this year. It's not been done yet, but they want to. And the idea was that it's about, specifically developing equine tourism businesses with these Nordic native breeds. So the ones where, well, I'll show you, the ones where, I'll come to it in a minute. But the whole idea is that, I live in southwestern Norway, and it's a beautiful place. We got huge fjell, deep dalene, yeah? Fjord, coast, kyst, and we've got fjord, hest, dalehest, Nordlandshest, all of which have been bred. And, to be in these places. And I thought, what could be better than ride the fjord horse in the fjords? Ride the dalehest up the down into the mountain valleys. Why aren't we doing this? So this project came around. Again, you see, I'm talking the same kind of things. Why? What's the background? Because we need to add profitability to otherwise marginal farming enterprises, often in these places where the horses were originally bred. In Norway we call them seter, these kind of sheep and goat dairy farms way up on the high steep slopes. They were a key part of the Norwegian culture and economy. And now they're really incidental to it because the farms are too small, they're too difficult to mechanize. Now in Norway, to make a profit with dairy, you have to have a minimum of 200 cows and a robot milking machine. But this is where these horses were originally bred to make these farms viable. To go up those steep, that's why, you're fjording and all that. That's why they're so short and sturdy, and why, you don't have to feed them a lot of grain. If you don't clip them, you don't have to put rugs on them in the winter time. They were bred to work with people, to make a living in these really difficult, and as Marcus says, exotic landscapes. Yeah? And of course, you can't actually separate the horses from the cultural landscapes in which they were produced. You think of the Camargue horse in France, in Le Camargue. There's a lot of horse breeds that are the Mustangs in the American West that are actually, you can't separate the breeding from the landscape. Even when you take a fjord horse, to America, the Americans are like, they're thinking Norwegian fjords when they think of the horses. The horse takes a bit of that cultural landscape with it. And so, basically, we're looking at the fjordheste and the Nordlands/lynsheste. Now, I said economists argue, but you should get people arguing about whether the lynsheste is different than the Nordlandsheste or not. It is so. I know, I get it. Okay. But, the Nordlandsheste and lynsheste, that's up north of the Arctic Circle, from Buda north and up to Troms. Fjordinga, obviously, is, in the western fjords. And then we've got Islandshest and the Faroese hest on the Faroe Islands. Yeah? All of these were bred to work. Now, they may run and jump and do those things now, but they were bred to help people. I don't think I have a picture of the Faroe Islands here, but it's absolutely amazing. There's 20 trees on the Faroe Islands. I mean, there's no soil, hardly. And the mountains look like they're diamond cut by glaciers. They have these lines that go sideways. And you think about 500 years ago, people trying to make a life and a living in this harsh North Atlantic environment. So they bred their own horses that were really effective ways of helping them do that. That's what it's about. We think of it as kind of backwards, but it's actually extremely sophisticated. And we need to think about native breeds that way. Native breeding is just as sophisticated as Belgian warmbloods or thoroughbreds. No? It's just that they were bred for other purposes. And if you come from that, you start to see. Now the key thing here, of course, is that population of horses goes off the cliff after the Second World War and is only now starting to come back. And a large number of native breed horses are the ones that are most at risk. There's a crisis in Norway 2 years ago about the Fjordingen. Less than 200 foals were born in 2011. Now it's not a problem because there's more Fjordingen in the United States than there is in Norway, and it's a separate stud book. And there's more Fjordingen in Canada than there is in Norway, and it's another separate stud book. But in Norway, yeah, the numbers are, they're getting into danger territory. And the reason is because there was no more economic imperative for people to keep these horses. They replaced them with tractors and trucks and internal combustion engines. And if people, we buy horses, we love our horses, we spend our money on them, but you don't have to feed a tractor when it's not working. And the farmers turned to tractors and stopped buying these horses. There was no more economic imperative. And that was really where the bulk of the loss of these native breed horses came. So this project is about creating new economic imperatives. Horse tourism. Native breed horse tourism. For people to breed these horses. To keep the breeds alive, to keep the numbers sustained and maybe growing. Now, I'm not going to take the time to get into this, but like I said, these breeders on the Faroe Islands 600 years ago were not simple, ignorant peasants. They were sophisticated breeders who knew the genetic material they were working with and said, well, I need this out of a horse. Well, what about if I put these two together? Will I get that? Oh, that didn't work. Well, let me put these together. We need to really think about just, how much expertise was involved. Through centuries of careful breeding, they produced the most efficient and useful animal they could. We tend to patronize peasant societies. And we really shouldn't. I'll give you another quick example. I used to have a teepee, which is a bit like one of those Sami things. Yeah? And I made it from an anthropologist's book. And I was amazed. I followed exactly the instructions, the 24 poles. And it's like I used to say, it's 3,000 years of refined nomadic technology. There is nothing excess. It's the smallest amount of stuff to make a permanent dwelling that you could move. You could survive a hurricane. It's really comfortable. Because for thousands of years, people refined the design and made it better and better. It's the same with native breed horses. So, I'll come back to this business with the stories. So the point of this project is to support and strengthen the native breed sector in tourism in Western Norway, Iceland, and the Faroes. And of course I'm talking about providing a tourist experience using native breed horses. And I'm going to just go through a lot of this, but the whole idea is that we've got these three incredibly different breeds. You know, you've got, everybody knows about the Islandshest, yeah? I mean, they're taking over everywhere. I'm actually writing a book about native breed horses right now. And one of the chapters is called the Iceland Vaffle. How did these Iceland horses get everywhere? How did everybody suddenly go like, these are the best horses? As the quote was in the Faroe Islands, what do you want these Faroe horses for anyways? Get an Iceland horse, they're better. You've got the Fjordinga in Norway, which is a small but growing population and an even smaller but slightly growing tourism market. And then you've got the Faroese horse. There are 62 Faroese horses alive in the world right now. And that's double the numbers of 15 years ago. And there's a real problem, and nobody in the Faroe Islands was interested. There was, in fact, a man went around gelding. And they stopped him when there were 2 stallions left. I think it was in 1969 or 1972. What are you doing? You don't need these horses, get a tractor. So this is a breed, and they used to export between 2,000 and 6,000 a year of these horses to Scotland and England to work in the mines before the Second World War. And now there's 62 alive right now. So our partner in this project is looking for financial ways, economic imperatives, to continue to breed these horses. Yeah. And they're great bonny wee horses, you know, and they live outside without blankets, and you don't even have to give them hay by half of the time, you know, they can rub through the snow, and they, you know, they seem to do okay. Sturdy little things. So we've got these 3 examples to learn from and to work with, and we're working with tourism boards, governments, breeders, and that kind of thing. And actual business. People who actually are using them. I'll just pass over this. The whole idea is, though, that we spend 1 year learning. We're in the middle of writing a generic good practice guide for horse tourism, which will be published at the end of the project. We're basically, from all of our interviews, we've taken 8 existing guides. The Highland Horse Pony Trekking Society Guide for Tourism, the British Horse Society, all these things. And we're distilling them together to make a generic guide for how to make good horse tourism business. And they'll be available for either free, digitally, or cheap in hard copy eventually when the project is over, to help support businesses do this. So we've been listening, learning, and talking, and we've just had our 2nd year of funding. With a 18-month break because the Faroe Islands partners fell apart in an orgy of recrimination and argument. And the headquarters of the funding is in the Faroe Islands. Oh, your partner's no good. So, however, we now have the partner all fixed, and we're starting our 2nd year, and we'll be holding a big meeting in each of the 3 places with a big final conference in Iceland in September, just before the Icelandic horse roundup. And at that point, the best practice guide will be available from this. I suppose really what I'm hoping is a couple of things will happen. One, we'd like to see people make a network all across the North Atlantic about horse tourism. If you want to go riding horses in the Faroe Islands, how do you find out about it? And also, you have to understand the nature of the horse tourism business. There are between 15 and 18 companies in the world that sell horse tourism businesses. They're called agglomerizers. They're a company, and all they do is they specialize in selling horse adventures. And you say, I want to go riding in Patagonia. Oh yes, we can do that. We'll make a custom package just for you. And then they subcontract to a horse tourism business in Patagonia. Now the classic example of this is something called Scandinavian Heartland. Has anybody heard of Scandinavian Heartland? This is what we need. We need to do something about this. This was an Interreg funded project of Fjällland in Östernorge and Västersvärd, yeah, the Swedish highlands on the border, yeah, in the mountains. And it was all about economic development in these two areas across, across the border. And one part of it is on horse tourism. And they've built a set of trails with cabins that they call bed and dale. So you and your horse can spend a night about a day apart. But it's not sold by Scandinavian Heartland, it's sold by one of these large English tourism agglomerators. And that's how they made it work, is they brought one of them in right up at the beginning and said, what do you need to sell it? And they've worked together to build this Scandinavian Heartland trail network. This is what we're learning in this project. As one of my economic development colleagues in Norway says, if you ask a horse tourism business, what are the three most important things for a horse tourism business? They'll say, horse, horse, and horse. If you ask a tourism business, they'll say marketing, customer satisfaction, quality. But we all know that in the horse world, you can spend your entire life learning about horses and still not know enough. Okay, what are we going to do? We need to build partnerships with those people who are experts. So we're trialing something in Sandefjord, where the local economic development board is working with the Reiselivsbureau, the local tourism organization. They will promote horse tourism, and then the tourist businesses will work on delivering. Because the Reisliv boutiques, they're the experts on accessing the customers, and they're the experts on providing evaluation of the quality experience. And I think that's really, to build equine tourism, we need that. We need to work in partnerships. Because it's just too much to own 30, 40, 50 horses, to run a marketing campaign, to do all your financial accounting, to deal with customers. It takes a pretty special, unique individuals to do that. But perhaps we can work together. Perhaps, we can, through that kind of upcoupling, we can help to build this. And that's how we provide new economic imperatives, is by thinking differently, thinking outside of the box. We don't have to do it all of ourselves. We do have to, however, learn how to get along with other people so that we can work with them. One final thing, as time's going here. We came up with something very interesting in the Faroe Islands. In Iceland, if you go with 10 people on a 5-day horse trek, you take 50 horses. Change horses at lunchtime. They have so many horses, You ask a farmer, how many horses have you got? Well, I don't know, 100. 100? Well, I don't know, they're up in the hills. It might be 106. I haven't counted them since May. So when you go out, you take all these horses, yeah? And yeah, there are these little horses, you have to be careful your feet don't drag on the ground. So you change them at lunchtime. Well, with only 62 Faroese horses left, that's not a successful model for horse tourism, is it? So what can we do? What can we do? We need to get money, and we need to create an economic imperative. And what we came up with is something that I called endangered species tourism. And the Faroe Islands gets 50 cruise ships a year. And there's nothing for them to do in Torshavn. Except for go look at the native breed Faroes sheep. But you can only do that once. So what we're proposing is to build a Faroes horse center. And have, like in Iceland, a display ring, those round rings, in Iceland they do that, they show off the tolt and they do all that. And we'll get the girls who already take care of the horses anyways to do a display, pay them. And there'll be a coffee shop, some souvenirs, maybe even a little museum. And people can come in the coach loads, each pay 50 kroner. A single coach load then is worth what, 15,000-20,000 kroner. Stay for an hour, watch a half-hour display, have a cup of tea and a cake, and go away happy in the knowledge that their 50 kroner is helping to support this lovely little breed of ponies. It's an interesting way to think outside the box when you think about horse tourism. Because it is, it's horse tourism. And, you know, really they're limited only by their capacity to deliver that. Yes?